Mary Diamond. I'm a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway. Who here knows at least a dozen realtors? Everybody, we're everywhere it seems. But let me tell you why I'm different. I'm a certified senior housing professional, which takes about 6 months of dedicated training and education to really become well-versed in the senior community and how to do business with them. I'm one of 6 realtors in California that have earned this designation, so I really focus all my efforts and all my practices on the senior community. Serving the senior community is what I'm passionate about. I consider myself an educator. As you'll see by these monthly seminars, we have seminars planned all throughout the year. They're the second Tuesday of every month here at 10:30. I'm an advocate and I'm a realtor. I'm here to equip you to make wise choices, whatever the topic, and today it's Prop 19. Educating you on the good things and maybe not good things and how to work them when you go to sell your house. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to try to make you do anything you don't want to do, but I'm here as a resource and I'm happy to help in whatever way that I can. After the presentation, we'll open it up for some questions. A couple of you have approached me. If you could save your questions till the end, and we'll have plenty of time to answer those. So just jot them down and we'll get to them. Anybody have questions before we get started? I'm going to use the table here. It's funny. Okay, Proposition 19 and tax benefits for seniors. It is more than that. We'll cover that in a few minutes. Next. The disclaimer, being as I'm not a tax professional or an attorney, I'm just a realtor, I have to put the disclaimer up there. It's essentially, this information is provided as information only, as a resource. If there's any conflict, the laws, the language of the proposition applies, I advise you to consult your tax attorney. But I will do my best to answer any questions that you have. Your agenda, the things we're going to cover today. Morning, ladies.
Morning, sorry.
No worries. We're going to talk about Prop 13 basics. So Howard Jarvis, everybody familiar with Prop 13, Howard Jarvis proposition? So we're going to talk about Prop 19. We're going to go over scenarios and a couple of frequently asked questions, and then questions and answers. Here, come on in. I'll give you a minute to get settled. So Proposition 13, it provides 3 very important functions in property assessments in California. Under Prop 13, all real property has an established base year values. And those base year values were established in 1975 and 76. So if you owned your property before then, whatever your property was worth at that time is your base year value. If you purchase your property after 1976, the price you paid is your base year value. That's important because there's a maximum of 2% increase in base year value assessments, and we're going to get into this in depth in a few minutes. And there's a limit of property tax increases of 1% on your base year value. So that's all a result of Prop 13. Base year value, we talked about that. The value of your home that was set in 1975, 76, or if you purchased your home after whatever the price you paid for it. The assessed value is base year value plus approximately 2% increase per year. And what we haven't covered is market value, what your home is worth today, which is most likely, especially here in Santa Barbara, $2 million more than what you paid for. So, setting assessed value increases by about 2% each year. If your home was worth $100,000 in 1990, I was talking to a gentleman out in the parking lot. He bought a home at Castillo right at the park that he paid $300,000 for. Somebody offered him $3 million in cash just recently. So, if your home was worth 1990, with the approximate 2% increase in assessed value, in 2022, your assessed value would be $188,000. The market value could well be 1.8 million. This is important, and we'll get into some examples, is this 188,000 assessed value is what you're eligible to transfer.
Could you say that again, please, Gary? Assessed value is what?
Do you wanna go back? So, if your home was worth $100,000 in 1990, with the 2% increase in 2022, your home, the assessed value would be equal to about $188,000. Even though your market value could be 1.8, 2.8, $3 million, whatever. So the assessed value, the most important number we're dealing with right now is the current assessed value. That's what you're able to take with you when you purchase a new home, provided you meet the requirements. And we'll get into the requirements in a minute. Okay, yes?
This assessed value business, if you didn't own the home in 1990, if you bought it in the 2000s, the assessed value starts from the date that you purchased it?
The date you purchased it and whatever price you paid for it.
But that's not the assessed value, that's the
So,
market value.
no, the market value in 2000 is, when you purchased it in 2000, that was the market value. So, it's allowed to be assessed up to 2% per year, to create your new assessed value.
Okay, so the basis of the assessed value is the market value when you bought it, even though that could be, as you point out, considerably higher than the county's assessed value. I don't get it.
Okay,
Those seem to be
so
conflicting.
when you purchase your home, if you purchased it after 1975, when the base values were set, your base value is whatever price you paid for it. And then your assessed value is a maximum of 2% per year added on to that purchase price. Okay,
Regardless of how it's been assessed by the county or the tax people.
correct. I mean, there are certain instances where you can ask for a reduced assessment, but that doesn't really happen here. Okay, if, in a recession, the 2006 recession, when that happened, home values went down, but really not enough here in Santa Barbara, maybe in Nebraska or Kansas or other places in the country, that the assessor's office was not really reassessing property. Okay,
We got ours reduced
great,
at that time.
excellent.
But that assessed value that they set is different from what you're talking about?
Let me answer that at the end. Okay, next slide. Assessed value is the fair market value at the time of change of ownership. When you buy a house, when you sell a house, next slide please. Triggered by new construction. So if you end up putting in a new kitchen, new bathroom, new roof, a pool, your home is gonna get reassessed at the current market value. So, there's really no workaround for that unless you don't file for permits, but that creates another can of worms that you don't really wanna get into. So, whenever you have a change of ownership, your assessed value will change. So, sale, new construction. Next slide, please. So, we're gonna get into Prop 19. Property law tax changes. November 30th, 2020. So this has been going on for a couple of years. They've clarified most everything, but with COVID, not a lot of people took advantage of it, not a lot of people know about it. So that's why the seminar today. Prop 19 is known as the Home Protection for Seniors, which is 55 years and older, severely disabled, or families and victims of wildfire or natural disasters act. You only need to meet one of those criteria. You can be 55 and over, you can be severely disabled at any age, or you can be a victim of fires or natural disasters. We all know that happens here. We're gonna talk about the intergenerational exclusion. That was a point of contention that has now been clarified. And then we're also gonna talk about base year value transfers for persons 55 years of over disabled victims of natural disasters. Okay. So the crux of the law is that eligible persons can keep and carry over their existing base year value transfer, there's that word again, to a newly purchased or constructed home within 2 years of sale of original home. So let's break that down a little bit. So base year value transfer, is everybody clear on what their base year value transfer is? Okay, whatever you pay plus a 2% assessment. So if it's $188,000 that we talked about before, you take that $188,000 tax base, is what it is, go to a new home, purchase it for more or less than you sold your original home for, and you keep that same tax base, which means your property taxes essentially stay the same.
Even more than what you sold it for?
Yes,
Let's-
and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So, eligible persons can keep and carry over their existing tax base year value to a newly purchased or constructed home within 2 years. So the timeline starts when you sell your original home. So if you sold it 3 months ago, you still have 2 years from that date, because the law is now fully in effect. One of the differences between Prop 59 and Prop 19 is you can go anywhere in the state of California. Okay, you used to be restricted to certain counties. You had to move within those chosen counties. Now it's anywhere in the state. And versus being only able to use it one time, you can use it 3 times. So you can use that, take your original tax, base year tax value, go anywhere in the state, use it 3 times. Okay? There is no limit to the market value of replacement property, but the original value is added to the assessed value, and I'll give you some examples of that. Okay? I wrote it down here, so. So, base year value transfer. Can everybody see this? Great. Oops, too far. So, homeowner who is over the age of 55, which is one of the qualifications, sells primary residence for $1 million. Okay, granted that's low here, but it's a nice round number. At the time of the sale, assessed value of the original home is $500,000. So when he bought the home, his assessed value was $500,000. He can sell it for $1 million now. Homeowner purchases a replacement residence for $900,000. Say good luck with that, huh? Since a replacement residence is of lesser value than the original primary residence sale price, the original assessed value may be transferred to the new home. The assessed value remains $500,000. So if the price you paid for your new house is less than the price you paid for the original house, your assessed value transfers, no problem, just straight over. Okay, everybody got that?
Assessed value is always the base value, purchase price plus 2%.
Correct.
Compound and
Yes, correct. Okay, everybody got that? Next slide. Base year value transfer scenario number 2. We're using the same situation. Homeowner is over the age of 55, sells primary residence for $1 million. At the time of sale, the assessed value of the original home is $500,000. The homeowner purchased a replacement residence for $1,200,000. Okay, so it's more than what they sold their other property for. We find the difference in market value between $1,200,000 and $1 million. It's $200,000. We add the difference to the transfer assessed value, so that's $200,000 plus $500,000. So your new base year value is $700,000. So $700,000 compared to $1,200,000. You're saving $500,000 in property taxes. which would be what, 5,000? I'm not very good at math. 1% of 500,000. Okay, we get that?
Yeah, I guess my understanding was incorrect. I thought it was just a straight transfer of your value that you were paying previously.
Depending on the price. If you sell the property for more than you, if you sell the property for more than you purchased, then it's a straight transfer. If the
Okay.
property you buy is more, you take the difference
Oh, got
and
it.
add it onto the assessed value.
Okay.
But still, you're saving money because you're paying taxes on 700,000 versus 1.2.
Okay.
Clear? Next slide.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Maybe I'm just a little confused, also math challenge. So if you, let's say you bought your original place for $1.5 million, and now you're gonna sell it for $3 million.
Okay.
And you buy a place that's just $1 million, you're downsizing.
Right.
You're still paying taxes at the rate that you're paying on the previous house, which is higher.
If it's higher, then you just take the new tax rate. You don't have to file for the exclusion.
Okay, because it doesn't benefit you.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you take your situation, you bought it for $1.5 million, you sell it for $3 million, you buy a new place that's only $1 million, it's less than what you paid for. You would just take the taxes on the $1 million. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. This intergenerational transfers, makes a lot of people upset because it makes it harder just to leave your property to your kids. You can't just do that and have them keep the same base year value tax rate, which is the way it was. So this is one of the changes that has upset a lot of people. So I'll try to make this as clear as I can. The property must be the principal residence of the parent, the grandparent, the child, or the grandchild. And that person is the transferor. The property must become, and this is the key phrase, the principal residence of the transferee. Parent, child, grandparent, grandchild. And it has to be done within 1 year of the transfer. So date of death, sale, whatever. Well, it wouldn't be a sale. So property must become the principal residence. Those people must reside in the property full time for them to keep the original property tax base. So if you bought a home in 1990, you leave it to your kids in 2030, the only way they can keep that 1990 property tax base is to live in that home within 1 year. Okay, otherwise it gets reassessed at fair market value.
So they can keep so you can still give it to your kids and keep the tax the same as long as they live in it.
You got it.
Okay, so it's not gone, it's just.
It's not gone, there are certain rules. Okay? All other real property, vacation homes, second homes, investment properties, no longer eligible under any circumstances.
So can they rent out a room or they can't make any money in any way, like if there's
I'm not sure I understand your
like if
question.
your kids took your house and they moved in it as owner occupied, and say there's like 2 units on the property, can they rent out?
Okay, so we cover that in just a little bit later, how multi-unit properties. If they wanna rent out a room, like a big,
In the house?
in the house, then I don't see any problem with
Okay,
that.
as long as they're in it, okay.
As long as they're the primary residence. An exclusion value, and this is where it gets a little complicated, and we'll talk about some examples. Exclusion value is limited to the current assessed value plus $1 million. And I'll show you some examples to make that clear. So, property residence must be a principal resident of the transferor, the grandparent, the parent, the grandchild, the child. The property must become the principal residence of the transferee, whether it's some parents, the grandparents, the child, or the grandchild. All other real property does not count anymore, and the exclusion value is limited to the current assessed value plus $1 million. Got it?
I don't understand what exclusion value is.
We're gonna talk about that in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. Okay, intergenerational transfer, that's a mouthful. So scenario number 3. Okay. I'm gonna read this here so I get it right. A mother and son own a property in which the son resides, but the mother does not. And that's important. Upon the mother's death, the mother's interest transfers to the son. So they both own the property, mom died, interest goes to her son. Is the transfer from mother to son eligible for the parent-child exclusion with Prop 19? Yes? No? Anybody know? You're shaking your head no, that is correct. If the mother passed away on or after February 16, 2021, the transfer of the mother's interest in the property will not be eligible for Prop 19 as the property was not the mother's principal residence. So there's that principal residence. Okay, everybody shaking their head, they got it? Next slide. A homeowner, sorry this is so small, but that's why I put it here. A homeowner transfers their home to their mother as her primary residence. The home has an assessed value of $300,000, which was whatever they paid for it plus the 2%, and a fair market value of $1,500,000. So the mother is now the principal residence. Son transfers to the mother moves in, it's her principal residence. Rule number 1, they've met that criteria. Calculate the Prop 19 exclusion value by adding the assessed value to $1 million. So that's that $1 million we were talking about. So $300,000 assessed value. Okay, the $1 million exclusion. So your excluded value is $1,300,000. Okay, but there's a catch because the fair market value is $1,500,000. Okay, fair market value $1,500,000. The difference $200,000. So we take the original $300,000, which is original assessed value, plus $200,000, which is the difference, and your new assessed value is $500,000 compared to $1,500,000, which is the market value.
Let's say $10,000.
Okay, everybody got that? You want me to go over it again?
Yes.
Okay. Son transfers his home to his mother. She becomes the principal resident. So that's rule number 1. The assessed value at the time of transfer was $300,000. You always add $1 million to that for the intergenerational transfer. So the excluded value is now $1,300,000. But the fair market value is $1,500,000. Difference is $200,000. Original assessed value plus the difference equals $500,000, which is the new assessed value.
Well, who decides the fair
An appraiser or realtor. So as a realtor, I go through, I can do a market analysis, tell you what I think your home is worth, but for the paperwork, you would need an appraiser to come and do it.
So it would just be kind of subject to, because I know sometimes those are,
So
and is there like a certain list of appraisers that are approved and only these guys and
yes, and then we contact the assessor's office, get their list.
is it a special kind of appraiser that's, you know?
No, just a side note here, the difference in appraisers is far and wide. The most important things is you get somebody local, and it will run you about $600. It's always good, you can always call me, I can come really close, because that's one of the things I'm really good at, is assessing the value of your home, give you an idea. And then if the appraiser comes in higher, great, if he comes in substantially lower, you pay the $600, have another appraisal. Done. It's just worth it to save you thousands of dollars over the lifetime of the tax bills to get the appraisal right. Okay? Questions? Got it so far? Next slide, please. So, there's no reassessment of the assessed value plus $1 million in the exclusion in market value. So, if your assessed value is $700,000, you get the $1 million, you get $1,700,000, you sell your home for $1,500,000, or you buy a new home for $1,500,000, straight across. If the reassessment is applicable to the value above the assessed value plus $1 million. So if you buy a home that's worth more, you take the difference, add it to your original assessed value, and that's what you pay for property taxes. Okay, looks like everybody's got that. Okay, next slide, please. I'll take a breath here. When a parent who held their property in a revocable living trust passes away, will a change of ownership occur? Yes, no? Yes. Death always results in a change of ownership. The death of a property owner is considered a change of ownership. We look through the trust and the beneficiary becomes essentially the new owner as of the date of death. Since this is a change of ownership, the properties are subject to reassessment absent an applicable exclusion. So either the parent-child transfer or the intergenerational transfer. So anytime after February 16th, 2021 is when this law was finalized, that law applies.
Did you address how much time you have before is it just the typical cycle of property tax due? For example, let's just say my parents pass away, my sisters and I plan on selling their house. We're not going to go through this process of living in the house or deciding one of us. How much time do we have to sell the house before the reassessment kicks in?
There's no definite time limit. Actually, let me change that. Let me change that to 2 years, because that's the maximum amount of time that you have for the reassessment.
But it's beneficial to get an assessment pretty close to when the person passes away.
No, it's beneficial to get the assessment when you go to sell the house.
Really? Okay.
Because it could change. A 2-year time period,
Okay.
I mean, look at this last year, homes went up almost 40% in some areas here. So you want the assessment when that,
So somebody passes away, you have 2 years to get it assessed, did you say?
you have 2 years to, you have 2 years to keep that property tax base. So if you were to pay taxes on that property, let me clarify that, let me throw a little disclaimer in there, that's my belief, because the standard law is 2 years, but that's a good question. I would check with the assessor's office with that, to get the real answer. Let me write that down.
So you possibly either need to get it assessed or pay the taxes, or how do you, we're just not sure how to keep the,
That, and I'm not either.
okay.
So I'll get that question answered. So I don't give you the wrong information. And I'll put it out in an email after. Okay, next slide, please. I think you asked a question about multiple units,
Oh, yeah.
okay? So, how does Prop 19 impact an owner-occupied multi-unit building? Okay, the child receiving the property would need to move into whatever residence the parents owned. So if it was a duplex, they move into Unit A, which is where the parents live. Unit B would be assessed at fair market value. And then they pay, if they live there within 1 year, they get the transferable tax base. The other unit is assessed at fair market value, and it becomes one new tax bill. So whether it's a 2-unit, a 4-unit, a 50-unit building, if the child lives in the unit from the parents, they can keep their property tax basis on that particular unit. The rest gets assessed, reassessed. Okay, next slide, please. So, there are 2 things that needed to be clarified, well, more than 2, but clarified on Prop 19 when it came out. Okay, so one thing I didn't cover in the morning earlier, and I believe you asked me this. Prop 19 is a state amendment, or an amendment to the state constitution. So it's essentially a constitutional amendment just for the state of California. So it can't be repealed without a lot of processes. It would have to go to the voters, it would be repealed, but as it's an amendment, it takes 2/3 majority, I think, to get it repealed. So it's not likely to be repealed easily. Not saying it can't be repealed, but it's an amendment to the Constitution. Yes,
Are there people trying to repeal it?
you know, I did a lot of research and there's always people trying to repeal any law. You know, you can't make everybody happy. So there is a small group, but I believe Prop 19 benefits more people than it harms. So if it came up to the voters again, I believe it would pass. And the
Counties aren't happy about it, they're
Yes.
getting less money,
The
less tax
assess-
money.
yeah, and I agree with that. The assessor's office is definitely not happy about it because it creates so much more paperwork with them, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because that was another question. Counties aren't happy, but one of the primary purposes that the California Association of Realtors pushed this law through was to create more housing. And so another big thing is, where is all our housing coming from? This is encouraging people who have lived in their homes for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years to move, so that we open up housing, because we're not building enough. People have no places to live, our prices are going up, so there's two sides to every story. So, California Association of Realtors really was a proponent of this law to create more housing. And it's also beneficial to, so remember when we talked about the intergenerational transfer, it does harm people. It does harm people that have created all this wealth through their real estate that we're going to pass on to their kids. There is one exception that I was reading about in a way that you could pass it on and keep the tax basis. I'll give you a brief overview, but I'm not an accountant, so I would really recommend you talk to an accountant by this. If a mom has a home that she wants to leave to her kids, but they're not going to live there, but they want to keep it as an investment property, she can take 50% of that home and transfer it to her son. And then a period of time later, whether it's 9 months or 9 months or 2 years, she takes the other 50% and transfers it to her daughter. So no tax reassessment, because nobody owns more than 50% of that property, will occur. Okay, so that's kind of a workaround. If you don't transfer more than 50% of the property, there is no assessment. Okay? That's all I'm gonna say, because I am not the expert in that matter. But there is a workaround from what I've read.
But it has to be a child, I mean, you can't keep
Relative.
50%.
Parent, it has to be parent, grandchild, child, grandparent, within the immediate family.
So the mom couldn't own 50% and the son 50%?
But what happens when she dies is that it transfers automatically to her son, and a reassessment would occur.
And you couldn't have a trust where when she dies, the other 50% goes to the daughter, no?
Of the daughter.
The daughter, I'm gonna say that would work, but once again, I'm not the expert. So she should transfer it to her daughter before she dies to avoid all the rules.
I don't think in that definition, the son's spouse would be included.
Not that I believe,
Has to be a direct relative.
direct relative. Okay, two areas that are not, the disability is pretty well defined here. I don't know if everybody can read that, or if you want me to read it to you. The other one is what qualifies as the exemption for victims of wildfire and natural disasters. And I've looked all over, talked to people, I can't get a clear definition. To the best of my knowledge, victims of wildfire and natural disaster means that 50% of your home must be severely damaged, and you must have filed for federal assistance. Okay? I'll ask you.
Okay.
As far as a disability, person who has physical disability or impairment, whether from birth or by reason of accident or disease, that results in a functional limitation as to employment or substantially limits one or more major life activities of that person. That qualifies as a disability. So, once again, age 55 years or older, which is the easiest one, or severely disabled, or victims of wildfire or natural disaster can utilize Prop 19.
Or all the above.
or all of the above. Yeah, I would stick with the 55 years and older. If you have a choice of all those, stick with the 55 years and older because you don't have to fill out all the extra paperwork. Okay, talking about paperwork, next slide please. Paperwork must be filed with the assessor's office of whatever county you're moving to. The transfer does not happen automatically. So if you're moving to San Luis Obispo County, you file the paperwork with San Luis Obispo County Assessor. It's called a BOE Form 19. I have on the next slide, which we'll get to in a minute, I have the website that you can go to and get all the information on that. Somebody was asking me about how long it takes to get the paperwork done. It was you.
It's a one-page form, so it's not hard to fill out. But, you know, you submit it to the assessor's office and it just goes into the void. I don't know how long that takes, you know.
Currently, it could take a couple of years.
So meanwhile, what do you pay then?
Meanwhile, you pay the current property taxes, but you are also eligible for a refund when they get it processed.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason that it's taking so long is this really put a burden on the assessor's office. They weren't prepared for it. The law was really unclear when it came out. Nobody knew what was what and who was doing this and who was doing that, and they were just confused, which is kind of the case when a new law like this comes out. So now they're trying to process everything. I think in LA County, it's about 2 years. Hopefully, I have a lot of faith in our assessor's office, so maybe a year. You know, better than 2 years. So I would check in with them every 6 months. Not every month or anything like that, just check in with them every 6 months.
But in the meantime, you're paying a higher.
You're paying the higher property taxes, but you are eligible for a refund. So you're stuck with it, and hopefully they'll get to the point where they process it within 60, 90, 120 days.
Doesn't seem all that hard.
No, but it's a government agency, you know, they're backed up. They don't do anything fast.
I mean, what you said is correct, because when we submitted the form, we gave them a copy of our previous property tax. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, you know? You look at the old rate, you look, you know.
And that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
I think it kinda does though,
The only thing that happens immediately at the assessor's office is when you sell a house, it gets recorded the day of closing. Because the escrow person takes that document and stands in line at the courthouse and waits for somebody to stamp it. Then it gets recorded. It doesn't show up in the tax rolls for 6 months, but it gets recorded. Everything else, just flip a coin and pick a date.
You said you get the money back, the rebate, if you have to pay, you know my question. So how long does that, to get that rebate, how long does that take you? 2 years also?
So that's 4
I
years
don't
old?
have an answer for you. The question was, how long does it take to get your refund once they process it? My hope would be within 90 days. You know, and they're not gonna give you interest or anything, they're just gonna give you the money back. But you would get it back eventually.
Did you say this was a federal thing?
No, it's a state,
A state?
California State Proposition 19.
I was just thinking, I wonder if there's any grants available for the assessor's office. Like they need some help.
Okay, that finishes my presentation. What kind of questions do you have that I haven't answered? Yes, Jeff.
The replacement property, the
Okay.
second property. My understanding is you can buy it, I'm 52, you can buy it 2 years prior, it just has to be within that 2-year window of selling the primary.
Correct.
So if I bought, like if I sold when I'm 55, and I buy the second home when I'm 53, it just has to be within 2 years.
Within 2 years, backwards or forward. So the question is, can you buy your replacement property before you sell your original property? Yes, as long as it's within that 2-year period. So he's 52 now, he'll sell his primary residence at 55, buy a new one when he's 53, provided all the dates line up within that 2 years, and that's acceptable. That answer your question?
It does.
Great. Other questions? Yes. Property tax rate is from Prop 13, and I don't know if you were here when I was talking about Prop 13, is limited to 1% increase per year of the assessed value. So going back to assessed value, whatever you paid for the property plus approximately 2% per year is your assessed value. So it would be 1% of that. So if your assessed value was 188,000, 1% of that versus a market value of 1.8 million.
But if a person goes out and just buys any property today, what is their tax rate on that new property?
1% of the purchase price.
Just 1%.
I thought it was slightly higher than that.
Yeah,
It's like 1.8.
1.8, 1.10, it's about 1%. Thank you. It's about 1%. Could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. You have a question?
So could a second home, that you have a primary and a second home, does a second home not qualify for anything probably?
No. So primary, if we go back to the intergenerational transfers, that it has to do with Prop 19 and intergenerational transfers, investment property, commercial real estate, second homes do not qualify for those tax benefits.
What if, this is kind of specific, so I don't know if it'll help at all, if it's not, good for the group, you can answer later, but what if there's a property that was destroyed in a fire? So it's land, and then the person passed away and passed it down. So it's not livable at that, so do they deal with the taxes and the market value and all of that?
Okay, first off, it depends on when the person passed away. If it was after February 16, 2021, then this would apply. Honestly, I don't know how land applies to the Prop 19 transfer. That's another good question I would ask the assessor's office. Karen?
What if you have two kids and you want to give them each 50% and only one lives there? Do they both have to live there and make that their primary residence?
Okay. My recommendation would be to talk to your tax advisor, but leave it to the one daughter, and then she could finance it and give the other daughter her share.
Now, it's gonna be their primary residence, how long do they need to go to live there? You know, is there a time limit, how long they need to live there before, hey, this was a scam,
That's a good question. I would say 2 to 5 years,
Okay.
because that's the capital gain. You have to live there two of the 5 years, you have to keep it your primary residence. That's another really good question.
Yeah.
Other questions?
We've been investigating other states, and what we have found out is that California is one of the few, or a little bit unique in this 1% of fair market value thing that you were talking about. When you buy a house now, and your taxes assessed at 1% of fair market value. A lot of states, Arizona, Nevada, and others, they don't do it that way. They do it on the assessed value. So if you're buying a home from somebody and their assessed value is whatever, and you buy the home, then you inherit their assessed value. Inherit is the wrong word. You get their assessed value. They don't look at fair market value. California does. Do you have any idea why California does that compared to so many other states that do it differently?
So the question is why does California get as much money as they can?
Right.
Exactly. It's California. I don't have any idea why other states create their laws. There may be different reasons for each state, but I don't have an answer.
Do things differently.
So everybody,
No, I know, but it just, I mean, from what we've discovered is, California.
There's some good things and bad things.
there's good things and bad things. I mean, do I wanna live in Nebraska? No. So even though their tax values may be less, it all depends on what's important to you.
But that was one of the reasons for Prop 13, right? They wanted to, people were protesting property tax, the highness. of it.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so 1%, I'm really glad that it's limited to a 1% property tax,
Right.
honestly. I don't know what they are in the other states.
You just don't know if another assessor would assess something out of another state,
Yeah.
year to year, or how often.
You know, granted, it's probably a lot less expensive to live in many other states than it is here. So if that's something that you're looking for, reasonably priced housing, then by all means, then that's what you should do, regardless of, you know, I don't know of any states that charge 5 or 10% in property tax. I can't speak to that because I know California law.
Okay, thank you.
I think the flip side, I'm just using a personal example, my parents own a property, in Vermont, and they've owned it for many, many years. On the market in California, the thing would be worth millions and millions of dollars. They have not seen an increase in value on that house in the last, 20 years, it's significant. So yeah, California takes its chunk of change, there's no doubt about it. There's no comparison. If you own property in certain states in this country, you are not going to see the benefit of the property values going up. They just don't, they sit on the market for a long time, so there's a flip side,
Yeah. Absolutely, two sides to every story. Is property expensive here? Absolutely. Is it one of the most expensive areas in the state to live? Absolutely. But once you have a house, the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. If you didn't buy a house 20 years ago, the best time to buy a house is today. Because property values consistently go up and up. Over the last year, we saw, not kidding, 40% increase in property values in this town. They've come down since. Average home price used to be 1.2 million pre-COVID, then it went up to 2.4. Now, then it went down to 1.8, and right now we're about 1.6. But still, it's one of those investments that you cannot go wrong with in California. Okay, as a whole, Santa Barbara especially, we don't follow national trends. Yes.
Sorry, what if you buy another property that is the same value as you sold your home for, and so you have no bump up there, but it's a tear down and you just totally remodel the new place, is there any issue?
So if you think back to what transfers a property tax increase is a significant construction. So if you totally remodel the place,
The new place,
you're gonna get reassessed at the current value.
is there a time span where it's safe, like if you just left it as is for 2 years or 5 years?
No, whenever you significantly remodel a property,
Even 10 years from then, they're just gonna.
you're just
So
gonna
you just can't
reassess.
touch it. You can't fix it
Well, you can fix it,
But if you think about it, if it's 10 years later, it could have went up tremendously, so you can't really.
yeah. So you fix it right away.
Be prepared to buy an immaculate home. Okay.
Well, I mean, if you can buy a property that's a fixer for $1 million less than the same property if it was turnkey, then it kind of balances out. Jeff, you have another question?
How long does the second property have to be your primary residence?
Somebody had asked that before, and I don't know the answer. If I had to guess, it would be, you have to live there 2 out of 5 years, because that's a capital gains law. That's a really good question.
You said you could do it 3 times, does that mean that from 55 till, 100?
Yeah.
You can move to different places and keep bringing that along with you from the original property?
You know, that brings up an interesting point. Back to your question, how long do you have to live there? If you transfer your property tax base up to 3 times, you could live there 3 months and transfer it again. So I amend my answer to that, because you can transfer up to 3 times, so thank you for pointing that out. You can transfer up to 3 times anywhere within the state at whatever value you want to go to under Prop 19, as long as you meet the rules. Yes?
I had a question about, primary residence. If you convert a substantial portion of your property into an ADU, but you're still living in the other part, would that affect your definition of primary residence at all?
If you're still living in the primary residence, no. But you will be taxed on the ADU if you build an ADU, you're significantly improving your property, so your entire property may be reassessed. Okay, good question. What else?
Would a realtor file this form for you or help you with it, or would you need to hire a tax?
I'll help you.
Okay, so you don't have to like go out and hire a tax attorney.
Unless there's something complicated, the BOE form, BOE 19, is a one-page form. So it's really not that hard, and the process is waiting for the assessor to process it. Yeah, it's a pretty simple form.
Is that form available on that website?
Yes, this website here, boe.ca.gov/Prop 19, has all sorts of great information on Prop 19. It has a link to the forms, it has the rules, it has the regulations, it has pretty much everything that I covered. 4 specific questions that I was not able to answer today, call the assessor's office, or I'll call and pass out that information. I apologize not knowing all the answers, but I know, I know a lot of things, not everything. Yes?
What about the 3 times rule? So, you move and you apply with the one-page form one time, okay? How long, do you have to live there a certain amount of time before you can move again and apply again? And then, so you take your property tax again with you the second time, and then the third time, and then that's it?
Yeah, so thinking this through, I don't think there's a time limit, being as you can move it 3 times. So if you keep your original, so you have your original home. Diagram this out. So if your original home, your assessed value is $300,000. If you buy your second home, or actually it would be the first home, because it's your first transfer, if it's less than what you sold your original home for, your assessed value is still $300,000. Okay? If the second home you buy is, say, $200,000 more than the original home, or that this home was sold for, your assessed value is gonna be $500,000. So the $300,000 plus the $200,000, okay? If the third time you transfer, it's the same or less as your second home, it's still gonna be $500,000. Or if it's more, you take the difference and add it to that $500,000, so you go up or down.
Up
Okay.
or the same?
I'm sorry.
Up or the same?
Or the less or the same transfers evenly, more you take the difference, add it to the original assessed value. Okay? More questions? No? Okay, while you fill out your surveys,